Hello, welcome to another edition of Smoke Signals. I'm your host for today's show, Lieutenant Chris Taylor from the LaGrange Fire Department. On today's show, we have with us Manager of Public Safety, John Whitney of the West Georgia Health System. So don't touch that dial. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back. Today on the show we have with us the Manager of Public Safety, John Whitney. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Chris.
It's always a pleasure to talk with you. I know we've been networking with one another for many, many years, right. And it's a pleasure to have you on the show for the first time. And I know you have some great things that you would like to discuss concerning the West Georgia Health System. Sure. Before we get into that, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been with the West Georgia Health System?
I'm the Public Safety Manager, which is over the Public Safety Department for the hospital. Okay. And I'm also the Safety Officer for the organization, and I've been in that position since 2007. Okay, good. Now, and I'm quite sure being a Manager of Public Safety, you have a lot of responsibility. And a lot of time that you had to devote to some of your roles and responsibilities. Right. Now, since you are the manager of public safety, tell us about your role at the hospital in general. Well, generally, like I said, I'm the manager of public safety, and we have a security staff there at the organization. Mm-hmm. And we're one of the few hospitals in the state of Georgia that are licensed through the private detective agency through the state of Georgia. Okay. So we have officers that are around the clock 24/7 that work at the hospital, and they oversee just general safety and security for the organization. All right. Now, you mentioned you have quite a few areas of responsibility, but let's break them down and talk about each one in general. First, let's talk about life safety. Okay. And in life safety, does that include fire safety as well? It does. Life safety is generally your rules and regulations and your standards in regards to National Fire Protection Agency, OSHA, in regards to that type of stuff. And I make sure that we're in compliance with those for the organization. Okay. We have yearly audits or inspections that are carried out by the state fire marshal and the local fire marshal, and sometimes OSHA comes and makes sure we're in compliance with certain things. Definitely. And when you're talking about life safety, and especially in the area of fire safety, that is something that everybody needs to be aware of at all times. Correct. Because when you have a fire incident, you don't know where you're going to be, but knowing that you're in a public facility, correct, that is following under the codes and standards that are need to be met by state and federal government, people should have some sense of security. Right, and we want to make sure everyone in the hospital knows their role in regards to a fire. You don't have time to look up a response chart. You need to know what to do right then and there. You don't have time to go look and say, well, I think I need to pull a fire station. We don't really want people to not report a fire, so to speak. If they think there's any evidence of a fire in the organization at all, I don't have a problem with someone pulling a fire. Pull station. Right, because it's always safe than to be sorry. Correct, and I can always explain why we did something in regards to somebody's safety. I don't want to have to explain why we didn't do something. Right, exactly. Now let's talk about your role in the security division. Okay. Like I said, we're through the private detective agency through the state of Georgia, and we have officers there. Some are armed and some are unarmed. Okay. The role of a security officer in a hospital has changed immensely since I've started in 2007. We receive a lot of people that are unhappy or need some medical care that requires some possible mental health mental health, so to speak. Interventions? That, and they're needing help. Some have some drug dependency, and we receive a lot of people at the hospital in that capacity. Well, along those lines, of course, with, our economic situation and, of course, people being out of work, I'm quite sure that will have a factor on that with people who normally didn't have any mental illnesses. Right. Now you have people who are depressed and have other financial issues and things of that nature that they're having to deal with. So you're probably seeing a lot more of those people now that you didn't used to see. You're absolutely correct. And actually, my staff is a mini police force, so to speak. They, not only do they have to make sure my people are safe. When I mean by people, I'm talking about the staff of the organization. Right. But anybody and everybody that enters that facility, we have to make sure that feel safe and secure there.
Right, and I'm quite sure that you make sure that your security officers understand the importance of their roles and responsibility, and also, you know, customer service is another important factor.
You're right. Some of the first people you run into at the hospital is the public safety staff, and you know, they're public relations officers. I want them to be approachable and be able to handle something. Gone are the days of someone wearing mirrored glasses and nothing but the facts.
Right.
You know, they have to be approachable, and you know, that sets the tone of their visit there sometimes.
Right. I mean, because it could be down to something simple as someone coming up and needing directions.
Correct.
You know, I mean, because, you know, being in the fire service, you know, we're kind of like that information center as well. We get people that come in that are lost or might need some other services that we might be able to provide there in-house. So you just never know what type of service you're going to provide in the community other than just what you actually offer there at the facility.
You're absolutely right, and you have no idea what these problems these individuals are bringing to the organization, at the hospital. You don't know what's going on with them, so you have to treat everybody the same. Okay,
definitely. Now let's talk about the role of emergency management, which is a big umbrella compared to some of the other roles and responsibilities there at the hospital.
Oh yeah, I spend a considerable amount of time on emergency management. We're not only governed by federal agencies and state agencies, but we also have a joint commission accreditation. There's standards that we have to meet in regards to emergency management also.
Okay. Now, emergency management, and of course we follow on emergency management too. When you talk about such as emergency preparedness per se, what are some of the things that you all do from an emergency preparedness standpoint when it comes to maybe storms or other type of disaster situations?
Well, Joint Commission requires that we test our actual disaster or emergency preparedness twice a year. To an actual event. If we do not have an event, then we have to have a full-scale exercise to test some of these avenues for emergency management. And some of the requirements that they require us to have are you have to have an influx of patients and you have to involve your community partners. Now, what capacity that involves our community partners depends exactly on what kind of disaster we may have. If we have, say, a vehicle turnover or a bus accident, that might not necessarily involve the police department coming in, but it could also with the investigation. But you wouldn't want to call the hazmat team in to investigate a school bus unless there was an incident with a train or something like that.
Exactly.
And you have to test your capabilities, and your drills have to be on something that could happen in the organization or in the community. Now, being in LaGrange, we're not going to have a tidal wave and we're not going to have a volcano, so what good would it do for us to test our capabilities in response to a volcano or a tidal wave? And we develop what's called an HVA, a Hazard Vulnerability Assessment, every single year. This test what would possibly and look at the likelihood of what could possibly happen to our organization or in the community, and that's how we develop what we're going to test it on each year.
And just to give some examples of some of those things, situation, and you mentioned about train, you know, there's a train, a railroad track right there within several feet of the building there. And if you have an incident involving a train, you got to think fast and you got to figure out, okay, what do we need to do to get these people out of here, and where are we going to take them, especially if there's some kind of chemical leak?
Correct. And like you said, it's less than 100 yards from our facility. We have identified that on our hazard vulnerability. The likelihood is very low that we'll have a train derailment, but if something in that capacity does happen, it's very serious, and we need to make sure we have staff that are prepped to recognize and organize quickly in regards to something like you just said.
And then not to mention, you know, you talk about the cold season. We're in the winter months, flus and things of that nature. You know, people getting sick and flooding the hospital emergency rooms and things of that nature, because you know that can very well happen. And not just mention flu, but any other type of illness that could actually tax the personnel.
You're exactly right. And I actually just met with District 4 Public Health in regards to that. If we have an influx of people presenting with the same type of symptoms and they overwhelm our emergency department, what can we do to set up an alternative care site to take care of that and then bring those people into the organization, or can they help us take care of just someone presenting that might have the symptoms but not actually have the flu, so to speak?
Exactly. And of course you have a testing facility that will you know, identify, you know, what is a priority versus a non-priority, which I know everything is a priority, but you got a higher level of priority and low levels of priority.
You're exactly right, and that changes in a minute too. You know, things can change very fast. And you know, the thing with our emergency management, we want to make sure it's mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery are the key things to any type of emergency situation.
Right, and we've been instrumental in working with you all on a lot of different disaster type drills and things of that nature, which it helps us because any type of disaster happen, the fire department is going to be involved anyway.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's good to have us in there, come in there and utilize our incident command system, and you know, expose our personnel to some things that we're not normally exposed to.
Correct, and it helps when you know faces and can deal with things on a level that, if you know, with National Incident Management System, you know, that's a nationwide response to disasters, and we follow under that also. Right. But it still helps to have a familiar face and network with people on a day-to-day basis that we do. And
you said a key thing there, networking, because when you have a lot of agencies involved in any type of disaster or incident, communication is a key factor.
And that's the biggest downfall in a lot of disaster drills and emergency. Communication can always be better.
Right, it can be. It's not an easy fix.
No.
We can always practice and try to use resources that will help us to be better when it comes to communication. Right. But you can't completely 100% fix communications when you have an incident, because no incident is the same.
You're exactly right. And there's an unwritten motto: you prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Exactly.
So to speak.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more with John Whitney, the Public Safety Manager at West Georgia Health System. Welcome back. We're here with John Whitney with West Georgia Health Systems. John has shared a wealth of information with us in our previous segment about the hospital and some of his roles and responsibilities that he has, which he wears many hats at the hospital.
A few.
And sometimes I believe you feel like you need to doff off a couple of those hats to some other people to take on responsibilities.
Right.
Now, we've been talking about emergency management. Now let's talk about the federal emergency management, which is on the federal level.
Okay.
We've been talking about everything on the state level, but let's even get even further and talk about the federal level. Okay. Now, we've been talking about the many disasters that possibly happen, which, you know, when you talk about disasters here in our community, we're subject to a vast majority of disasters, even though the potentials are always there. Right. But we still have to plan for them.
Correct.
One in particular that I can always think about is ice storms.
Correct.
We don't have them that often, but when they happen, they can be very, very time consuming.
Correct.
And they can create a lot of damage.
Right.
And especially with power outages and things of that nature. So let's touch on some of the disasters that we have identified for the Troup County area, because I think that's important for our viewers to know what are some of the type of dangers that we have and what can they do at home to put together a family emergency preparedness plan.
As you know, like I said earlier, we have an HVA, hazard vulnerability assessment, that we do every year, and at the top of that list every year is severe weather, tornadoes, thunderstorms that can you know, cause problems, and ice storms. Being in the South, I grew up in Kentucky, where I'm used to dealing with a little bit of snow, but it seems like we even get a thread of snow down around this area. All the Twinkies and bread and milk go out of the Walmarts, and people go into a panic. And we do have a plan at the hospital for ice and severe weather like that. We have 2 main generators at the hospital that can run everything that we have on that facility for about 14 days. Okay. So we're well prepared for that. And if we have an issue where staff can't come to the hospital or make it to the hospital on their own, we have a team that they're elected. If we find out you have a 4-wheel drive vehicle, then guess what? You're going to be part of the snow recovery team, and you're going to get to go pick people up.
Exactly.
But we're also prepared, like you said, on a national level through National Incident Management System. Myself and another individual have taken many courses through NIMS, 300, 400, 700, and 800, all those. And we also require that all the leadership of the organization take 100, 200, and 700, and 800. And I know that the general public watching that might not have any idea what that means exactly.
Exactly.
But it makes everyone in the organization familiar with an incident command system that is used throughout the nation, so to speak.
And also it addressed the agencies that may be involved in that incident management system.
Correct.
And of course, being in public safety, we also had to take those national certifications as well. So it's a across the board thing. It's a great thing.
It is.
Don't know what they're going to have coming out in the future as far as other national incident management system type courses. But I'm quite sure as they continue to look at all hazards, that there might be some others that we might have to take in the near future.
Right, and you're exactly right. And some of the staff at the hospital quite understand, why am I having to take this course? Well, if you're called and we need you during a disaster, you'll know what to do. You know what's expected of you.
Right, and on a national level, we're not just centered to being here in our hometown. We're supposed to go anywhere in the United States where we're needed.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
All right, now we talked about natural disasters involving the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and you also talked about that there are 6 areas of emergency management agency that falls under that. And what are those 6 areas?
With Joint Commission, we're not only held to the standard of mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Being a healthcare organization, there's some more standards that we have to make sure that we take care of during a disaster. And one of those areas is communication. We have to make sure we have communication, like we said. Safety and security. You have to make sure everybody's safe and secure coming in and out of the organization. And the responsibilities and roles of staff also. They need to know what to do, and that's where the NIMS comes in. You have utility managements, like what I talked about with the generators. You want to make sure we've got what we need there. You also have to take care of patient and clinical care activities while you're there also. But one of the key things you have to make sure, and the last one, is resources and assets. What do we have at the hospital that we can take care of ourselves if, say, you guys can't get to us, or we're running low on food? How long can we take care of ourselves? Self-sustainability. We have to know what we've got on hand.
And every agency has to have that kind of assessment, because you just never know what type of incident it could occur here in our community where we are, can't go home and we're stuck on the job and we're still providing a service to the community. Because that's what the community expects us to do as being an agency and a service provider in our community. Is when something happens, they don't have anyone else to call. They have to rely on us, and we have to do whatever we can with the community, understanding that hey, we can't fix everything. We do everything we can to try to utilize the resources that we have available to us. Sometimes those resources are right at our exposure, and sometimes it may be days or weeks in some cases before we have those resources.
And we need to know at the hospital, we're going to be a hub. People are going to come to the hospital to gather information too. They're going to show up. One of the root words of hospital is, it's hospitality. Hospital. We're not going to turn anyone away. We're going to bring people in and comfort them and take care of them, and that includes families of patients or victims that we have. And we have plans in place to deal with the families also at the hospitals. Okay.
Now let's talk about training. Training is another important factor when you talk about emergency management and also public safety. So what are some of the things that you all have in place that you all actually do as far as prepare your staff for training, whether it be fire training or any other type of training that the staff might need?
Well, like we normally do, we do a disaster drill, whether it's actual in regards to an actual incident, but we also test it also. And what we did last year, instead of leadership being the head of the incident command, we decided to bring secondary roles in. What if I'm not here? Or what if this individual is not here? What are you going to do, to take care of an incident? And, we've got coming up with you guys, we're going to do some hands-on fire extinguisher training. And I joked with the staff there, I said, we're actually just going to put a garbage can on fire and let you put it out. Well, no, we can't do that. There's a safety issue there with that. And that's why we want you guys there. And we do things like that throughout the year for our staff, because a lot of people have not put their hands on a fire extinguisher and don't realize it takes a little strength to operate that.
You're actually right. And one of the things, being one of the instructors when it comes to fire extinguisher training, I always try to teach the students that fire extinguishers can do one or two things for you. it can allow you to put the fire out,
right,
or it can make the fire worse.
You're exactly right.
And we don't want to make the fire worse.
Right.
And in situations where we have a person who is properly trained in using that fire extinguisher, knows, how to use it,
right,
how heavy it is, like you mentioned, because a lot of
right.
people don't know how heavy it is until they actually pick one up.
Exactly.
And then how much is actually in that fire extinguisher that's going to allow them to either control the fire or put the fire out totally.
Right.
And being able to have that training is very important. And then once they get that training, they realize, like, wow, I did not know that there was so much involved in just the fire extinguisher side
right.
of it. But we always ask those that we train to take this information and share it with other people who may not be aware of it.
You're exactly right. And there's nothing like hands-on training with something. I can use the acronym pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep until you've actually put your hands on one and use that.
Right.
And like you said, you can cause more damage if, you can spread whatever that possibly is burning onto other surfaces if you do not use it properly.
Right, because everyone learns differently. You have some who are visual learners,
right.
and then you have some that have to really put their hands on what they're doing to be actually efficient in performing that task.
Right, and then we have different type of fire extinguishers throughout the facility. We don't have the same type of fire extinguishers in the general public area that we have in our operating rooms, our surgical suites in those areas too.
Right.
So you need to know what their capabilities are also.
And to know, regardless of what the situation is, whether it's electrical, if it's a flammable liquid,
right.
you don't throw water on it.
Exactly, exactly right. You are right.
Okay, now, some other things we want to discuss, codes. When you have an emergency at the facility, I'm quite sure y'all have a number of codes that your staff need to be familiar with.
We do.
So when you have this emergency, they don't think it's supposed to be, they're supposed to be acting
right.
in another way.
Right.
Everything is in a systematic format
right.
where everyone knows, okay, if this code is called, this is what everybody's supposed to do at this
Correct.
time, or where everybody's supposed to assemble. So kind of talk about those codes.
We have a general overall emergency operation plan, which specific individuals know what they're supposed to do in response to an operation plan. But like you said, we also have specific codes. We have a code gray, which is a severe weather tornado possibly in sight. We have a code orange, which is a bomb threat. Code silver, which is one of our newest codes that we've developed, is in response to an active shooter or hostage scenario within the organization.
Okay.
Then you have code ambers and a code atom, pediatric and infant abduction codes also.
Okay.
And the way we reinforce that is we have computer-based learning, which brings up those specific codes, and everybody in the organization has to test those every year, take a test on that, and meet 100% compliance. But we also test those hands-on throughout the organization also.
Okay, well that's good. It's good to know that you have a system like that in place, because if not, things can be very chaotic, and
right.
People can end up doing something that they shouldn't be doing. But
right.
Being able to have those codes in place and everybody on the same page and understanding what their responsibility is means a lot.
It does, and the general public might not be aware of it, but our staff knows, and they can advise the general public while they're there at the organization, this is what we've got going on, can you please assist or leave or move to another area.
Okay. Well, we got a few moments left,
okay.
and one thing I want to ask for our viewers, when it comes to visitors coming to the hospital,
right.
What are some safety tips would you like to give them just to protect themselves when they're there on the premises there at the hospital?
Okay, and like I said before, we do have a public safety staff on site, and their job is to assist you if there is a problem.
Okay.
But we also have call boxes placed throughout the organization in parking lots, which act as like a two-way radio with safety and security. If you have an incident, you go to a call box, you push the button, and you have to speak to it.
Okay.
And then an officer will answer you. That officer will be able to tell where you're at and where he needs to respond to. But just general safety tips are like anything else. Pay attention to your surrounding. Have your keys in your hand.
Okay.
As soon as you get to your vehicle, lock the door.
Right.
Sit down. If you think there's something wrong in that area, do not go to your vehicle. Come back to the hospital or the organization. Get a public safety officer.
Okay.
That's pretty much just common sense.
All right. We appreciate all that wealth of information that you shared with us today. And once again, we appreciate you for being on the show.
Sure.
And we'd like to thank each one of you for viewing another segment of Smoke Signals. And until next time, take care.